You're listening to Let's Talk Pricing, your connection to the voices, stories, and strategies shaping the pricing world. Each episode, we go beyond theory into the practical, timely conversations that help you lead with confidence and drive results. Let's start the show.
Hello and very good day, everyone. I'm Kevin Mitchell from Professional Pricing Society, and I want to welcome you to the Let's Talk Pricing podcast from your friends here at PPS. This is a podcast where we talk about ideas, trends, best practices, strategies, and tactics, and the future of pricing, revenue management, and related fields. And today we have a very special guest. I'm very excited today to talk with Gaurav Dawar. Gaurav is Senior Manager of Pricing and Revenue Management at WillScot. WillScot is a multi-billion-dollar portable storage company based in Arizona. And prior to that, a lot of us probably know Gaurav from his work at Republic Services and elsewhere. And I'm really excited about today's topic because we're going to be talking today about a phrase that is really almost universal in pricing. And that phrase is, of course, we have moved to doing value-based pricing. And of course, we're going to talk with Gaurav about that. We're going to see when that is true, when that is not true, with his experience of helping organizations move beyond intuition and moving out of cost plus pricing by using data-driven pricing systems, by looking at willingness to pay and looking at fixing the quoting process. He is an expert in today's topic. And really, I'm very excited about today's topic and about our speakers. So Gaurav Dawar, Senior Manager of Pricing and Revenue Management at WillScot. Welcome to the Let's Talk Pricing podcast. How are you today, G?
Doing good, sir. Doing good. And thank you for having me. And thank you for the nice introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, thank you for your time. We are really looking forward to getting some pearls of wisdom from your expertise as well. And I know that we have talked about this before, but you've done some very recent deployments there at WillScot. You have improved your company's price realization, generated a lot in incremental annual revenue, and you've reduced your approval escalations by a huge amount. So first of all, congratulations about that. And this makes for an excellent topic for today's Let's Talk Pricing podcast. So first of all, let me ask you this. You mentioned that the phrase that we've talked about, why we've moved to value-based pricing, usually is not true. Can you explain to our audience what you mean by that?
So that's a great starting point. So what I mean by that, when I hear through many other organizations this phrase that we have moved to value-based pricing, and then I end up finding that it's not true to the sense that it should be. And the reason for that is that in the leadership, in the boardrooms, that concept of value-based pricing is very well known, and that's where they want to move to. So that's what they projected out. But to operationalize it, to be able to get information, belief, adoption down to where the quote is happening, that usually doesn't pan out. So it happens in the board decks, but it doesn't happen in the execution of these things. So that's what I mean by that. It's not the intent is missing. It's not the understanding is missing in the organizations. It's just the execution layer is not as sophisticated as it should be on that front.
Very interesting. And yes, that makes perfect sense. And I know in talking to a lot of pricing organizations, sometimes there's one team who is involved with the so-called price setting, and there's another team who is involved with the price getting. And sometimes that disconnect also, the disconnect between plans and the actual execution, what happens out there on the street with your customers, that can lead to some suboptimal results. And that really is kind of the crux of what we're talking about there. So we're planning on doing value-based pricing. We've got all the decks. We're talking about it. It's a strategy that's out there, but sometimes it doesn't really become actualized, and we kind of revert back to cost plus pricing. So you have also mentioned in some of your writing and some of your speeches that I've seen where you say that cost plus isn't really a strategy anymore. It's a default behavior for people who kind of are going to the lowest common denominator. Can you expand upon that and tell us a little bit about your thinking there?
Yeah, absolutely. So cost plus margin strategy, I'm not by any means demeaning that. That's a good strategy to have for anything that is commoditized, right? So in that sense, that you're basically optimizing for margin, and even in that, there could be more deal level specifics that we can work through, and we'll talk about that. But in general, in organizations where your products are not all commodities, and in that way, the cost plus is not a strategy per se; it is more of a fallback. In absence, that's the absence of the right information that you need to know to understand what the customer would be willing to pay for this product, right? So if the rep doesn't know what should I sell this product to this customer at this time of the year, and what would this customer be willing to pay, then the default fallback is, in absence of that information, I'm going to fall back on what's my cost, what's my understandable margin that I want to get to, and then I'm going to discount until the customer says yes. That becomes a default behavior, a fallback, not necessarily a strategy. So that's
Understood. Yeah, no, I got it. That makes perfect sense. Thank you for the explanation there. And large organizations, of course, have armies of very effective and efficient cost accountants. So we're also always very, very good at determining what it costs for us to make and to service our customer bases and things like that. But actually getting at the willingness to pay and actually getting to the so-called pocket price, sometimes there is a little bit of a challenge, to put it politely, in doing some of those things. So we always hear that a lot of companies want to move towards value-based pricing, but obviously there are hurdles in their way. There is human inertia, so to speak. There's human behavior, human nature. So where do people tend to begin on that journey? And what are some of the hurdles that prevent that from happening when we talk about moving to becoming a value-based organization?
And this I've seen again and again, where we begin is always the same in any organization, and this was true where I am at right now. This is where we wanted to start as well, and that is to segment our customers. That's your number one statement that you hear when we're talking about value-based pricing. That I want to understand what my value drivers are, what my tiered bands are, what my customer would be willing to pay. But that doesn't really do the job that we are trying to get to from value-based pricing, and that is to say, the same customer could be looking for that product in a time of the year where the need is not that urgent for them, and would be willing to pay a totally different price than the time if they need it in a week, in a crunch time where the demand is high and they're unable to get it from anywhere else. So the same logo, same week, same customer, totally different pricing, willingness to pay on the price, right? So that's what I mean by that. We always start with identifying which bucket I should drop this customer in, and it's more about understanding what deals should demand higher price versus the customer. Customer could be agnostic in that, and a customer in essence would end up playing a larger role anyway. So that's already given. You would want to understand what other D level drivers are would drive the optimization versus the customer itself.
Very nicely stated there. And yes, that's correct. And I agree with that. When we think we're doing segmentation, we look at a lot of demographic data, where I live, about my neighborhood, and so on and so forth, income levels, of customer size, customer geography, and things like that. But as you so nicely stated, depending on what's going on within that customer, that same customer really might have two very, very different segments depending on the so-called burning platform if they are facing one. And those are two very, very different sales cycles if you have an immediate need versus something that is more of a monthly purchase that you do all the time that you have scheduled versus something that's kind of an emergency there. So even when we think we're segmenting, we're not really taking the time and the effort and the customer need into effect as we should. And that's one of the challenges, of course, that we as pricing people have to face because customers can, of course, as you mentioned, change very much from situation to situation, from day to day. And hey, that's part of the fun of what we do is you have to figure out what's going on. You have to be a little bit of a detective and determine what is actually going on from all sides there, from a competitive standpoint, from a customer standpoint, and a lot more. And so if we think we are segmenting, but we're really not getting at the willingness to pay, what are some ways that you would suggest that we elevate and do that in a better fashion?
So eventually everybody starts with segmentation and does end up at a place that what else we can do, and they get the right idea of, okay, how do I get other value drivers into the mix that can tell me what my deal specific stuff is, right? And usually what people tend to gravitate towards in that situation is can I survey my customers? Can I talk to them? And that usually doesn't give you the same amount of information or the accurate amount of information as what your transaction history would. And the three big reasons for that is what a customer would say versus what they have done could be very different, right? There's an incentive piece to it when they're answering your questions in a survey versus what they have done, where they have incentive to get the deal they want. Second is scale. You cannot go through all of your customers to get that survey and get those answers done. And then third is the questions are going to be for one context, but what we're trying to get to is how does the context changes from deal to deal, right? So those are the three big things that kind of pushes that option out of the window and makes us gravitate more towards what am I sitting on already from a transaction history, which is rich from behavioral data, if we know how to pull out that data and make sense of it.
Yes, that's very interesting. Our customers' deeds are much more important and much more relevant than their words sometimes. And also, we know from whenever we interview someone, whenever we survey someone, there's always an interviewer bias, so to speak. And hey, if you ask me, if I'm a customer, even if I love you, if you ask me, my number one complaint is always going to be like, you cost too much. I just want to save some money, when really that might not be my number one complaint. It might be something that you mentioned earlier where my number one complaint might be, I really want this delivered at a time where it lets me do business without worrying about losing my functionality, or it fits in with my processes and it works better for what my company needs to do. So definitely understand that as well. All right, everyone, we are due for a very quick break here on the Let's Talk Pricing podcast, but we will be back with much more. We're talking with Gaurav Dawar, Senior Manager of Pricing and Revenue Management at WillScot, and we're talking about we've moved to value-based pricing, why that statement may not be true. Stay with us. More of the Let's Talk Pricing podcast is coming right back at you. Thank you so much.
This episode of Let's Talk Pricing is brought to you by the Professional Pricing Society. For over 40 years, PPS has been the home for pricing professionals looking to sharpen their skills, stay ahead of market shifts, and connect with peers who truly understand the discipline. From live and on-demand education to conferences, research, and career resources, PPS supports you at every stage of your pricing journey. Learn more and join the global pricing community at pricingsociety.com. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk Pricing podcast. Kevin Mitchell here with Gaurav Dawar. G is the Senior Manager of Pricing and Revenue Management at WillScot. And today we are talking about why the phrase "we moved to value-based pricing" may not be true and how we can close some of those gaps. So, G, a question for you here. A lot of companies estimate their willingness to pay, as we were talking about, through surveys, through customer interviews, but you have placed a focus on the actual data, their purchase data, the data that you have internal to your organization as a better guide on their willingness to pay. What led you to take that route, and what did taking that route reveal that your customers may not have been telling you when you tried to interview them?
Yes. So again, the reason we took that route is a culmination of what I have kind of seen in the past, of what has worked and what has not worked. As you know, I was part of a organization prior to where I'm at right now, where it's more commoditized products there, and it's more cost plus. So as everywhere else, we started off with the question of answering what segmentation we can do. And invariably, we dug into the data for that to understand how can I segment my customers. But through that exercise, you end up finding so much rich data that could explain behaviors for the same customer at different times for different products in uh, different deal dynamics, that it changes what needs to happen. And so that's how we moved from that towards the using the transaction data to collect, structure it in a way that it can be used, build some models around that to understand what each customer's willingness to pay is. And then there was a huge effort in making sure that we understand and test that. So it's a phased rollout, and it gets validated against your traditional NPS metrics that happen in the organization from the survey perspective. That what the words are versus what we are able to achieve are are not at odds with each other, or they're complementary to each other essentially. So that's how we went ahead and kind of took that road.
Understood. Thank you for the explanation there. So, as you've taken this road, as you have focused on customer buying behavior, as you focus on the data that you have in your organizations and place that as a higher level of truth than what the customers might tell you in face-to-face interviews, I'm sure that that led you to create kind of areas where you could determine their willingness to pay, what your products and services would mean to them at that time. So we talked earlier about there's a lot of disconnect with value-based pricing between the deck and between the actualization of getting down to true value-based pricing. So once you've determined customer needs and once you've estimated their willingness to pay, do you give your salespeople, do you give your people out there on the street talking with their customers, do you give them a set price? Do you give them a range? And what led you to those decisions there?
So yes, we do. So what we decided was, if I were to put uh, the most amount of value into all the things, that I would put it on us making this design decision of providing a range instead of single price point, because that a single price point kind of gives the rep a feeling that I'm being told what the price should be, and it's overriding what I think it should be. So they override it right back up. And there's a distrust that forms into it, and discounting becomes your default behavior. Again, it all falls back. The single price point doesn't give you the same confidence of understanding why I'm defending this price and why the customer will be willing to pay. It more so gives them that this is supposed to be what the price is, and that's when you fall back on cost plus. Uh, so the range allows us to kind of give them the agency with some guardrails, and that way we are able to explain and they're able to adopt the price better in understanding why I am selling in this range at this place versus the other. So they have the ability to exercise their agency, as well as we are kind of putting the guardrails around it. So that, if I were to put highest value item in the whole design, I would put it on this thing that has done wonders for the adoption. As I said, the value-based pricing is really understood at the leadership level, and that's where it stops. And for it to get adopted, that's where your real world impact is. And to get the real world impact, if there's one design decision, this is what helped us the most, essentially.
That is a very important point. And I like how you talk about giving your sales teams agency, about partnering with them, and about working with them. Because as we have kind of hinted on here, if this doesn't get beyond the big strategic decks, then it really is kind of just an exercise in futility if it doesn't get out there with the customers and with your sales team in order to partner with them. So that's very important. And I like how you described that giving them a range is very central to your way of moving towards true value-based pricing, giving them that agency, partnering with them, and basically having them be the face of the customer, but also giving them a little bit of leeway and a little bit of negotiation there as well. So that makes sense also. And I know when I talk to salespeople, and there are quite a few salespeople who are PPS members as well, of course, one thing that they often have a negative connotation with the pricing team is that sometimes our work can seem like a little bit of a black box, so to speak. There's this information, it goes in this black box, some machinations happen behind the scene, and you come up with a price or a range of prices in your example. And really, what salespeople tell me is they would like more of a partnership from their pricing counterpoints, from their revenue management counterparts, on understanding a little bit what goes on with those machinations. So have you done that with your sales team? And how would you recommend we get better at doing things like that?
So yes, and that explainability is a big part of adoption, because if the rep cannot explain why this customer should be willing to pay this price for this deal, then there is no way for them to kind of buy into that themselves, and they won't be able to kind of sell that further to the customer. The way we approached this problem was old school, in the sense that, like every other project, this was common that every project we go through a new rollout, and then there are a huge number of meetings and invites where you're training your sales team on that thing. And in that, you're explaining to a large group of people why and what this new system is supposed to be doing, and this is how you could benefit from that. All of that lands well, all of that gets you a good start. But over time, market by market, each example, oh, why am I seeing this? Why am I seeing this price? But this customer bought it at this price last time. Why am I seeing what all is playing into this? So the old school way we went through is do market price reviews every quarter, each and every market. This is a way for us to kind of touch base with the sales team to understand what they are seeing, what model is saying, and how, if there's convergence and divergence between those two. And we built tools to do the explainability for the examples that they're most worried about or they don't understand about. It's a constant churn of information that needs to keep happening, because the moment it sits still, it becomes a sediment and it doesn't go anywhere from there.
Thank you for the explanation there. And I like how you describe explaining things and talking about the market prices with your salespeople, of course. And one thing that's kind of a common thread through a lot of this is for us as human beings, again, inertia is huge and change management is tough. And I know with a lot of things that we're talking about today and a lot of things that are inherent in our very important part of the business world, that change management, of course, is always key, but usually it's not enough alone. It is a very important step on the way. So once you get beyond the change management, once you get beyond the partnership with sales, what are some other strategies and tactics that you're using to basically make the organization better at value-based pricing?
Right. So again, as you said it correctly, change management alone doesn't solve it. It never could. And wherever we had just done the change management and relied on that, it has all the information, all the system, all the value that got generated through the new rollout, through the change management gets stale and starts getting overwritten and you start falling back on that. To that point, right? So it kind of ties into what I was saying right before that if my rep cannot understand why this deal needs to be priced at this price, then no amount of change management would solve it, because that assumes that the whole problem from moving to cost plus to value based was behavioral problem, which is not necessarily true. It was absence of information, belief in that information, understanding what factors are playing a role into coming up with the recommendation, and it ends up becoming a tooling problem in the end, right? From a behavioral problem. So I think it's the misdiagnosis of the problem that causes us to kind of stop at change management, and understanding that this is not a behavioral problem. It's an explainability issue. It's an issue where you want to provide right tooling. So dashboards to explain stuff, waterfall charts, regular touch points, having conversations, and understanding we are all on the same page, right? And all on the same side as well. Because what ends up happening usually is when you are dictating or recommending price and you're not touching base on a regular basis, they cannot connect with what you're trying to push out. They cannot understand the reasoning behind it, because there are nuances in the examples that they are looking at, from which they could get confidence into the system or they can get distrust from the system. So if you're not there to guide towards the confidence by explaining why, they end up falling back on the mistrust, and then you diverge from what you were intending to do.
And when you diverge from that, of course, that defeats all of the good work, and it basically makes everything an academic exercise instead of something that is going to be realized later on, which is, of course, what we definitely do not want. Well, Gaurav, congratulations on moving your organization forward, looking at moving from cost plus to value-based pricing. And amongst all the things that we've talked about so far, partnering with the sales team, looking at the data, looking at change management, looking at the dashboards, being a wealth of information for them, looking at your market reviews, amongst all the tools that we've talked about so far today, what do you think has made for the biggest success, or has been the biggest part of your success at WillScot?
Oh, the biggest one. That's a tough one to say. What I would say on that is, the way I would put it is, when went through this exercise, this rollout and all that, we did not change how we view our products. We did not change how we segment our customers. We did not change our product's value proposition or any of that stuff. All we changed was moving from giving a dictated set price to a range which was guided by some data, and then constant touch points of explainability. As I said earlier, the biggest impact was because we decided to go on with a range, but other things plays a part in that too. If I had kept the old set price and just did a static percentages below or above to get a range, that wouldn't work either, right? So it's the deal specific recommendation along with design decision of putting out a range that made the biggest impact, I would say.
Understood. Thank you for the explanation there. And of course, your range gives your salespeople some agency. It shows that you're willing to be a partner with them. And of course, when you combine that with the explanations, with the data, with the work with them, with looking at willingness to pay, with the segmentation, amongst other things, then that leads to successful value-based pricing. So thank you so much for the explanation there. We are due for another very quick break here on the Let's Talk Pricing podcast. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more from Gaurav Dawar, Senior Manager of Pricing and Revenue Management at WillScot. So please stay with us. The Let's Talk Pricing podcast will be right back.
This episode of Let's Talk Pricing is brought to you by the Professional Pricing Society. For over 40 years, PPS has been the home for pricing professionals looking to sharpen their skills, stay ahead of market shifts, and connect with peers who truly understand the discipline. From live and on-demand education to conferences, research, and career resources, PPS supports you at every stage of your pricing journey. Learn more and join the global pricing community at pricingsociety.com. And now, back to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Let's Talk Pricing podcast. Today, we are talking with Gaurav Dawar, Senior Manager of Pricing and Revenue Management at WillScot. And we are talking about how the phrase "we've moved to value-based pricing" usually isn't true and how you can close that gap. Gaurav is giving us some great information about some of his successes, but we also are always interested in things that we could have done or will do a little bit better. And so the next question for you, G, is we should learn something with every implementation, with every pricing model change, with every change management exercise, and with all of the things that we've talked about so far in today's podcast. When you look back, were there any mistakes that you and your team made that you could have done perhaps a little bit better, or were there improvements that your company could have made along the way?
Yeah, so I would say you're right in learning through going through the process. And the biggest three mistakes that we did are the biggest three strengths today because we were agile enough to react to those. Again, as we used to push out a single price, we decided to do the D-level willingness to pay and thought of starting off with a single price as well, right? So that would, not in hindsight, but initial reactions, that wouldn't have worked. That wouldn't have changed a single thing, because when you move from one system or one way of doing things to the other way of doing things, the biggest task at that time is to calm the nerves that nothing would change dramatically towards the downside. And in effort to do that, when you roll from one system to the other system, you try to map the new system as close to the old system and slowly let it diverge to where it needs to go. So if the new system is going to look the same as the old system and we're still providing a single price, then there would be no impact. And there would be same friction of not able to friction towards change going forward. Moving from old system to new system where one price matches the old system, but you are providing a range along with it, that worked, right? So that's the pivot that we did. That was our first biggest mistake, to start with the design decision of single price point. The second was we did not evaluate too well what our systemic gaming from reps could look like, which is very common, and there's no negative connotation to it. It's more so that I don't have a better word for it, right? Because some reps inadvertently would figure out, right, that if I leave these three fields blank, I would get a better price. Mm-hmm. Right? So controlling that and understanding what differences what each factor could produce and how to solve that was our second one. But again, we pivoted on that and we made it a little bit more foolproof in that effort. Third was that when we started to rolling it out in phases, our change management started off with rolling this out, giving training guidance, but not one-on-one manager enablement, right? So we touch base in large groups to all sales reps all sales managers and the information is kind of spread out. And for one market, we did that and we did not see enough adoption. So we pivoted from there to start doing manager enablement sessions, which are one-on-one, so that if they are bought in, they understand everything, they can dissipate that information better down the stream without replacing the large training method that we were doing. So those were the three big ones that where I can recall that we started over something else and we pivoted for the better.
Got you. So definitely going from a single price point to the pricing range, and also remembering that we love our salespeople and we especially love how they can become Fields Award winners when it talks to getting to the mathematics of gaming the system, as you put it. And also, I can see the change management piece that you had in there as well, where the one-to-many training probably got some of them a little bit phased out, a little bit disconnected, but more direct training certainly helped them to move up and beyond and to perform better there. So understood the mistakes that you were able to correct along the way. So I'm sure a lot of people listening to us have understood that they have always thought that they've done value-based pricing, but really when you look at it, it might be more of kind of a different system. For those of us who are either voluntold to change to value-based pricing or who have raised their hands and want to do it themselves, where should they begin in moving to a value-based pricing approach?
So if anybody is raising their hands to do this, that would mean that the organization already thinks that they are either somewhat there or they are close to being there or they're already there, right? So those are the three phases of belief that I've seen, which is usually far from the truth. But so in that sense, right, what you have to do is prove out where the gap is. So you have to audit the gap. You have to understand what willingness to pay estimate set this price. So if I am pushing out a price today, what played a role in us coming up with that this should be the price? If the honest answer is, oh yeah, we looked at the cost and added some margin, you haven't made the transition yet. Right? We inherently like to believe that the price we're pushing out is value-based, but if we genuinely ask that question to ourselves, what specific willingness to pay metric played a role in coming up with this price? And if we don't have a very clear answer towards that, then we're not there. We are still sitting at cost plus margin. Two, most organizations today, based on how the technology has evolved, is sitting on this information. Your transactional history, what customer said, what customer bought, what customer, how long the deal took to close, which rep worked on it, all that information sits there, right? So we need to start. Second would be to start working on finding the signal from the information you already own before going out hunting additional information which you don't own, right? And third is, I think the best thing that we did was to put a range in front of the team, one team, start with one team, put a range in front of them, see how they react to it. And then you can take it from there. Don't boil the ocean, but yeah, take one product line, one region, one team, put it out in front of them, see how they react.
Absolutely. Yeah, we frequently discuss that on the Let's Talk Pricing podcast. If you can win some great deals in Rhode Island and then multiply those out and go, hey, what if we did this in California and Texas and bigger geographies or bigger product groups? So that's a great way to describe it. Definitely don't need to boil the ocean. A teacup is okay, and if that works, then you go to the bigger one next time and keep moving forward there. So, talking with Gaurav Dawar today, thank you very much, Gaurav. And the natural next step beyond deciding to move towards value-based pricing is thinking about our changing environments right now. Of course, we're living in very interesting times, and there are a lot of things that are happening within macroeconomics, within business in basically everything that's going on from a global perspective today as well. So for you looking forward, what do you see about, or what do you think about, excuse me, is going to happen within the pricing discipline for the next few years? What changes are we going to see, and how can we be ready for what's next?
Yeah, so going through this implementation gave me a very narrow bubble that I was living in. That yeah, this is obvious. This is for everyone, and this is everyone. I'm probably late to the party. Everybody might be doing this already. But as I've spoken to many other leaders and I've seen different organizations pricing teams, uh, what I've realized is that's not necessarily the truth. So what I think comes in our 3 to 5 years, again, total speculation here, right? Is that there is value in deal level pricing, willingness to pay pricing. If I'm able to see it, many people would see it too. So I think that becoming a default, not an exception, going forward is what I'm expecting. Uh, the good part is the technology exists today already. So it's nothing novel, right? We are not inventing ML models today. They exist, right? Uh, the data exists in most organizations, which wasn't the case 5 to 6 years or 10 years ago.
Mhm.
What's been missing is the implementation craft, and I think how to present it, how to get adoption, how to close the loop. If that is being solved now, my assumption would be one company at a time. The pattern establishes itself. It becomes more common, more default than exception going forward. Uh, and then second would be the convergence of prescriptive guidance and the real time market signals. Right now, most pricing models retrain monthly or quarterly. The next generation of competitive intelligence involves your supply signals, demand indicators, more closer to the real time than quarterly or monthly cadences, right? So, and in that, and I'm not predicting that for necessarily to be happening for every deal because that could become costly, right? But at least for the deals where market conditions are shifting fast enough. So if we can identify the market conditions for this product in this market for this time period, this configuration is shifting fast enough, you can retrain for that specific type more frequently, add more information to it, and be more agile in that front. And this is what I'm thinking of doing in my organization as well. So
Hey, best of luck as you make those changes for the future as well. And of course, we know from a global macroeconomic perspective that instability and change means that there's a premium on data, on customer insights, and on speed to market and speed to react, of course, as well, because speed is undefeated, particularly when there is a lot of uncertainty out there. And moving correctly and moving quickly, those things can help us basically survive and thrive in difficult times and changing times as well. So thank you for your explanations for that. So once again, to Gaurav Dawar, thank you very much for the time for joining us today on the Let's Talk Pricing podcast. And we had some really good insights on how we can truly say that we are doing value-based pricing and how we can take some very important steps in those directions. So again, thanks for giving us some great nuggets from your experience and from your expertise on how you've been able to do that at WillScot. So appreciate not only talking about the results and the changes that you've made in your organization, but also some of the practical lessons behind them as well. And you've given our listeners today something that is actionable and something that they can rely on as well. And also to our listeners, we thank you for being a big part of Professional Pricing Society. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Let's Talk Pricing podcast. And if this sparked new ideas, then certainly you can check out our other offerings. You can reach out to me. You can check pricingsociety.com or find us on LinkedIn or other social media as well. But let us know what we can do for you and your teams as well. And G, a question for you before we get ready and bring this episode of the Let's Talk Pricing podcast to a close. How should our members get in touch with you if they have questions or want to further discuss what we've talked about today?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or my email address is mentioned in my LinkedIn profile as well. Email me as well, and I'll be happy to respond back and answer any questions that anybody has.
And of course, the Professional Pricing Society team and I are looking forward to seeing everyone at upcoming PPS profitable events. We are going to be in Atlanta, our hometown, from October 27th to 30th. And we will also be in Amsterdam from the 1st to the 4th of December. So I look forward to seeing everyone in person in the next few months here. And once again, a very special thanks to Gaurav Dawar. G, thank you so much for your explanations about how we can do value-based pricing better. And until the next time, I look forward to connecting with everyone. And thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in to this edition of the Let's Talk Pricing podcast. Best wishes, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.